a playlist original.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, we are doing wonderful. Another good week of movie watching. How about yourself? How's California treating you?
Well, we're having a day after tomorrow weather anomaly in Los Angeles County right now. So the last week has been a lot of rain and even some hail. No snow here, but definitely snow in other parts of LA that don't normally get snow. Like Hollywood's maybe 45 minutes away from here where I am.
Okay.
And they were
Damn,
getting
that's nice.
they were getting snow by the Hollywood sign. And Friday night I worked so Fridays are my longest day because I wake up, have to write for work, and then I go and open the restaurant at 10:30 in the morning,
Okay.
and I'm there from 10:30 until almost 6:37 on Friday. But usually my friends come in on Friday because it's hey, they just come in, they get to kind of have a classy pregame before we go out, and
Nice.
I can just kind of jump into my weekend. So we started there and went out, and I kind of went home kind of early because it's a long day. It's hard to stay out too late on Friday. But when I decided to leave was when
Absolutely.
it decided to God just cried all his tears down on us. That very moment, I was legit stuck in the rain, trying to get it, and couldn't get an Uber. One was super close to me. He was 2 minutes out, and he's 2 minutes away, and he cancels on me. So then I have to try to get another one, and then he's 15 minutes away. So there was nowhere for me to really stand where I could be covered. So I got in that guy's car, fucking drenched.
And, man, and probably freezing.
And freezing. It was cold too. On top of that, it's I could deal with well, I actually hate the rain, but it was a combination of it was raining really hard, and it was also super fucking cold. It was at one point 40-something degrees during the day on Saturday, and that was
Okay.
that's unheard of in LA. But yeah, so cold wise, yeah, that especially during the day, if you where we live, in the South Bay, so it's by the beach, it's really rare.
Okay.
But so yeah, that was quite fun. But yeah, I think it rained today too. I lost track of when this is supposed to be over. We had a bright spot of sunniness yesterday, and that turned into cold weather by the time I got out of the movie I watched. And then it rained today, and now it's completely sunny right now. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it looks beautiful behind you there.
I hope it's over soon, dude, because I'm over it. Completely over.
Yeah, I can tell. Absolutely. Hopefully it is. Over here on the east, man, we're in the middle of our polar plunge of the year. February is definitely one of the colder months. So I don't know the conversion of Fahrenheit, but pretty much all weekend it's been in the minus 20 degrees Celsius over here, somewhere around that ballpark. And let me tell you, man, it's just depressing. I hate stepping foot outside when it's that cold. It actually sucks.
I'm gonna assume that's very cold in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it makes it easier to stay in and watch movies though. Yeah, it's cold as fuck is all you really need to know.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's all you need. That's all I need to hear. And I can do it. I feel it. Yeah, but you're right. It makes you want to stay in and watch movies and stuff. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. On that note, what'd you get over the last week?
Well, so on Saturday, I went to lunch with Owen, and we were we were trying to do something on Saturday that didn't involve going to the bars. Everyone was oh, let's do an activity. It's raining. All right,
switch
cool.
it up a bit.
Yeah, so we tried to go bowling, and there was a 2.5 hour wait at the bowling alley. So that fell completely through. Yeah, and then there was another 2 hour wait at another one that's close to us. I guess everyone had the same idea as we did.
Hopefully, I guess.
Yeah, so we ended up doing that kind of indoor private room karaoke thing at night. So that was pretty fun. So it's just it's all your friends. You just rent out the room for however many hours you want to rent it out, and we were just acting like fools, singing stupid songs, and it was great because there's no judgment because it's just your friends that are in the room. So it's a lot easier to do it if you're afraid of doing karaoke. That was fun. But before we
that's my kryptonite, man. I can't sing for shit. No, God, no.
It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be good though. I mean, karaoke's
I guess not. Yeah.
It's funny though because some people at some places we go to they are secret hidden singers that maybe just never got discovered, and it's so that's why sometimes public karaoke is not ideal. So this was really fun for us. So we were just acting like complete idiots, and it was a good time. But before we did that, we had to kill time before we were going to initially meet for bowling. So Owen and I were looking for something to watch, and he threw on that movie 21. It came out 2008.
Right.
It's about
Kevin Spacey poker movie.
Yeah. Yeah, blackjack movie about the MIT students that were like
Blackjack, yeah.
counting cards, and it's like loosely based on a true story. I hadn't seen it since it came out in theaters in 2008, and
Rewatch, hold up.
so it's a fun movie. The script. So we were talking about it while we were watching it. It has a lot of narration, and I'm just not a fan sometimes of narration where it's like, hey,
I recall that.
in case you didn't understand what was going on, like here's what's happening, and like a lot of the narration dialogue was really cheesy, and it kind of took us both out of it, like rewatching it again. But it's a very slick looking movie. It's fun. You kind of get caught up in the whole like, it'd be fun to kind of live that kind of lifestyle. Like they at least they capture that really well.
Totally.
The Kevin Bacon or not Bacon, sorry, Kevin Bacon, the Kevin Spacey stuff. It hasn't aged well because there's a lot of dialogue that's kind of cringy based on like what we know about him now.
I remember thinking that. I saw it once a few years ago, and like I was like, meh.
Yeah. Like so, like it's just weird because he's like a professor, and then it's not like they're underage. They're like, they're college students, but like he's an older person, like taking them out to Vegas and like making them count cards, and like a lot of the dialogue was like very like we just kept laughing because it was just so like, oh, this doesn't hit the same way it probably did in 2008.
Right.
It hits at a very creepy level now, but still kind of
funny
fun.
when movies are like, funny how movies are time capsules like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can be looked at differently.
Yeah, and I looked it up, and I couldn't remember if it did well, but we looked it up, and it made a lot of money when it came out. It made like $80 million here in the States and 157 million worldwide on like a $35 million budget. So like I don't know if it was just like a dry, because it was number one for 2 weeks when it came out.
That's what I'm thinking. There must
like
not have been a lot at the
yeah.
theater at that time.
But yeah, it was fun. It's just like some of the script choices were like, I don't remember them being that like cheesy when I saw it in 2008.
Right.
But I would still recommend it as like it's not even a quick diversion. It's 2 hours, but it does move pretty fast. Like it's not like slow.
Okay.
And then Owen and I on Sunday yesterday we saw Cocaine Bear together.
Right.
And
I'm seeing that tomorrow, and I can't wait.
Yeah, it's what I was surprised to go on Twitter to find that there were some people that just didn't enjoy it, and there were actually some people I follow on Instagram, like my boy Kurt, who's like the host of the Top 5 Film Dive podcast, and he's been on this show before, and I've been on his. I thought he was gonna love it, and then he posted an Instagram story that was like, "This is like one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like review coming soon." And then like when he posted the review, he gave it a D, like a flat out D, and I was like, "Oh well." So I guess judging from like, the premise and the trailer, I was like, I knew what I was gonna get, and I was happy with what I got. It's nothing to be taken seriously. I thought it was funny. I think it helped seeing it with like a crowd that was super into it, because like our crowd was like dying laughing at almost everything in the movie. There was also so I was sitting next to someone. Yes, and we were sitting next to people that were very like, whenever there were like cocaine references, they were like awkwardly being like, "Oh, that's way too much cocaine. You probably shouldn't do that. Oh, like they're probably dying." Like blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, so you guys are letting your like inner cokehead show. Like, calm down. We're in a movie."
Yeah.
And then there are also been these complaints about it glorifying cocaine for kids, and I didn't agree with that until there were a ton of kids in our like when I saw
Wasn't it rated R?
It's rated R. Now I'm assuming they were bought by their parents, and like But like I thought it was fun. It's as ridiculous as you probably think it's gonna be. You just gotta
lean into
the silliness of it. It's really gory, so look forward to that.
Okay.
And I will say there are like attempts. There's like 3 separate stories that it tries to flesh out, and I give it credit for like not just trying to be like a one joke kind of movie. They actually, and I think maybe that's could be what some people didn't enjoy, that like, oh, like there's these other like these side characters, and like we got to get to know them, and like what's the point? It's all about the bear. I'm sure they probably thought that, but I thought it was fun. Like it's knows exactly what it is, and I can appreciate that. And kudos to Elizabeth Banks, because I think she explained that she went into that meeting with Universal and the screenwriter and like pitched him on this idea, and she was so surprised that they were all in on it. And Universal has been all in on it from like the inception to like the marketing to like kind of lead in on the whole like cocaine aspect of the marketing, and like they haven't let up. And someone mentioned on Twitter that like Universal in the last 3 months has released these kind of, not budgets aren't too huge, it's kind of like offbeat movies. They released Violent Night in December, that made them back some money. It made like $71 million worldwide on a pretty small budget. They had Megan at the beginning of the year, like $171 million worldwide on a $12 million budget. This opened to 23.1 million. We'll talk about that later, but on a $35 million budget. So Universal is like really kind of on these original ideas that don't cost a lot to make, and they're getting a return on their investment. So
Well,
kudos to them on
hopefully,
that.
yeah, that's actually great to hear. Hopefully, that starts a little bit of a trend, and it'd be nice if we can start to see a little bit a trend away from like how we've been complaining about this sequelization and the squeezing of all these IPs out. That's actually a really great point. I kind of forgot that Universal had done Megan and Violent Night, both of
Yeah,
which, of course, have sequels in development now. But I mean, that's
yeah, they
to
do.
be expected. When you're making money, that's whatever.
Yeah,
Can't take that away from them.
now it's like right away too. Like, oh fuck.
Yeah. As soon as it makes a profit, ooh,
Yeah, yeah.
gotta,
It could be,
yeah,
they make like
see how far
$1.
this can
Like,
go.
yeah. Let's go. But yeah,
Oh well,
but I do want to give them credit for that because like that's in the last like that's been
absolutely.
this December, and then they had that in January. They had this in February. Now I don't know what the legs are gonna be like on this because it could have been like a rush to go see it, and then, but even if it kind of craters out, like can still see it finishing with like 50 million here, and that's a pretty good showing for especially for
Yeah,
it's a movie that's destined to be a cult classic, so it's gonna find more of its
I think
life
so.
much
And
later.
and we know we're not getting a sequel to that one. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't
I
expect
would
so
hope
anyway.
that. But yeah, like Owen and I both liked. I mean, we both thought like the script was like there were some cringe moments in it, but like that's not
For
what
sure.
you don't go to see it for that. You go to see it for like extreme bear violence while he's high on cocaine. So like there you go. And I'm gonna blank on his last name, but it's the guy who played Han Solo in the Star Wars prequel movie. He's in it. Alden. His last name's really hard to
Aaron
pronounce.
Reich or
So
something
yeah,
along those
that's
lines.
why.
Alden
So
Reich, something
yeah,
like
so I've
that.
only seen him in Solo, and after seeing him in this, I want the guy to do more comedy because he was super funny. I thought he was really funny in this.
Okay. I didn't even
Uh,
know he was in that, to be honest.
yeah,
Don't remember seeing his
yes,
face.
he has some really funny stuff, and him and O'Shea Jackson Jr., who's Ice Cube's son, they have like a really
Mm,
good like dynamic together. They're really funny together. But yeah. I think you'll have fun with it at least. I mean, you might like pick little things, but it's also super short, man. It's like
naturally,
an hour and 35 minutes, so it's a breeze through.
I love that. I
Yeah,
wouldn't want it to be longer than that. This doesn't seem like the story that really needs to go into the two
no,
hour territory. So I'll be looking forward to chatting that probably
yeah,
same time next week.
yeah, for sure. All right, what about you? What
But
did you get into?
I had actually a busier week than I thought. My week of watches was backloaded, similarly to you. So my best friend was visiting from out of town, out of province, and
Yeah,
we got another sort of like poker-ish movie, and we got the Gambler in from the 2010s. Can't remember. I should have known this going in, but kind of a similar watch
okay,
to like 21. You ever
okay.
checked that one out before with Mark Wahlberg, Brie Larson, your girl, and John Goodman?
I haven't.
um,
She's my girl. I have no. I haven't. I have heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Well, I'll say overall I liked it. It's a very performance driven story. The plot is full of ridiculous things that just would never happen in real life. I can't remember if it's like loosely based on a true story, but the plot is full of unrealistic expectations and scenarios and whatnot, but the performances are all very good. I'd say John Goodman in particular was particularly
Yeah.
menacing, and Mark Wahlberg was actually a great little sleeper role for him. And I even liked Brie Larson. I never got the chance to go off on this conversation last week. I haven't seen Brie Larson in a lot of her more acclaimed work, so I'm kind of just on her.
Oh, you
But I
gotta see
liked her for
Room.
what she
You gotta
was
see
in the
Room,
scenes.
man.
We didn't demand a lot.
You
I do got to
definitely
see
gotta.
Room. Absolutely, I do. I
That's
should
what
really
she's. I mean, she won an
Anthony
Oscar
Ford
for it.
darling, and I got to see it.
Yeah. She's
Right.
yeah. It is crazy
So
that she hasn't like done hasn't like kind of continue that prestige stuff that she was doing. Like she's gotten more. She
that
went
was a
straight to Marvel.
peak for her.
Went straight to Marvel and
Yeah.
Fast 10. So like it's her career trajectory
And
is really
Kong
interesting.
Skull Island.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't care for her in
forgot
that.
about that. Totally forgot that she just went to that too. Yeah,
Right.
that's
I
crazy.
It's kind of indicative of the whole movie is kind of forgetful, I thought anyway.
Yeah,
So got the Gambler in. Thought it was all right. Last night we ended our little staycation with late night Netflix watch. We for some reason got in Triple Frontier. That was probably my third or fourth watch of that movie. I don't think Cole had seen it. He ended up liking it. I don't know what it is about that movie, man. I have such a soft spot for it. I think it's so yeah, can't say enough good things about Triple Frontier. I think it's like criminally underrated. I don't know what everyone's grievances are with that movie. I didn't take the time to look through reviews, but I noticed the Metacritic score and the audience score are pretty similar, like somewhere in like the 60s. but I've seen, like I mentioned, this movie probably 3 or 4 times since it debuted on Netflix, and I can't say enough good things about it. It's a realistic, hard hitting action movie that centers on ex special forces guys robbing a drug dealer's fortune down in some southern country, and it's got a great ensemble cast of Ben Affleck, Charlie Hunnam, Oscar Isaac, Pedro Pascal, who's always great to see. I kind of forgot he was in this movie, and Garrett Hedlund. So got that in. Really enjoyed that watch. But really, the two big watches that I got in that I really wanted to chat about were Phil Tippett's Mad God in. I don't know if you ever got around to seeing.
No, I haven't.
You ever hear of it?
I've heard of it. Yeah,
It's
I've heard
a
of it.
stop motion.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Man, it's streaming on Shudder. 30-year in the making stop motion animation, like horror, bleak, depressing sort of movie. Like some of the best artwork I've seen on screen in a long time. Like I would really, really recommend that, especially if you're even into the stop motion animation form, or if you're looking for a really original horror movie. Really recommend that one. And it flies by. It's a really quick watch too, and it's got virtually no dialogue. So I would say that to anybody thinking about checking it out, just to know that going in. But Mastercraft rather, and then After Sun, finally got to watch that. It was going in. Man, you saw it recently as well, right?
Yeah, I watched. I wish I would have watched it a lot sooner. Like so many people have recommended it to me, and it just got like lost in the shuffle of other things I was trying to watch. But then he got nominated for an Oscar, and then I was like, all right, I should probably watch it. And
that
you know,
was it. Yeah,
that's the catalyst for me like doing it, because it was like, all right, well, this is the one performance I haven't really
same word I was going to use.
seen. And like I was on, like, speaking of Kurt, who I mentioned about the Cocaine Bear stuff, that was one of his like top movies of 2022 when we were doing our favorite movies of the year on his show. And the way he described it to me, I watched it after we recorded that, because he was so like moved and touched by it, and he also is like a father too, so I think that kind of like hit him a lot harder than in a lot, in the feels, like a lot in a lot of ways. And the way he described it and just how emotional he got talking about it, I was like, all right, I finally need to watch this. So I watched it. Not a father, but still hit me in all the right spots. It was like really well done, and like I can also see why everyone was rooting for him to get that nomination. Out of he was kind of like the underdog a bit. Like, please see this movie enough. Not in the same way that like Andrea Riseborough was, where it's like, oh, like they weren't like
similar.
It was just like, that movie's there. I mean, people have kind of seen it, but like, give him a shot, that kind of thing. And I can see why people were rooting for him. And like, it was touch and go, because he was getting some nominations and missing others. But I'm glad he finally got me. I can honestly say that like him getting that slot is like well deserved. It's a really solid performance. And honestly, like I didn't know anything about him prior to this, and I know he has a bright. I know he's in Gladiator 2. They're doing another Gladiator. He's been cast in that, and like seems like he's going places. But if this is any indication of like where he's headed, then I'm looking forward to like the stuff he's gonna give us like in the future. He was really and he has such a good rapport too. The girl that plays her, I just really love that relationship, and like they're kind of like very honest. I think that's the only thing I can really describe it. And and also, I think we talked about kids who act sometimes, and like
dude, phenomenal child performance.
She was so good, and like on the same level as him, completely in tune with him, and that had a lot to do with like me being invested, because I was like, oh, I hope I don't lose interest because she's either too precocious or too like it's gonna look like she's acting, but
not
natural.
At all.
No, natural. So and I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was. I thought an amazing debut by Charlotte Wells as well, and probably I would imagine a very personal story. It was influenced, I think, by her relationship with her father in a way. And actually, your point about not being a father, nor am I, but we are both sons, right? And like kids of parents, and like that whole relationship too is something that is universal, right? Not knowing the difficulties that your parents are going through when you're young, and how you can reflect on that later in life was very, very much a punch, and one I really like to try and squeeze in again soon after. I downloaded the score too. I thought it had a phenomenal score.
Music was good.
Music was super good.
That added to everything I was going. Yeah, it was so good.
Like it wasn't one that like made me emotional watching, because like I watched it with my buddy, but I can totally see myself like breaking down if I watch.
If you're by yourself.
Yeah, dude, that is a sad movie. Although nothing like overtly happens, it's just all in what you don't see.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that worked in its benefit, and it didn't hit you over the head with it. It just like it kind of
Right.
taps into these like
Subtle.
basic human emotions that we all kind of have. And like, I watched it alone, so like I didn't like break down, but I definitely was like an emotional viewing experience. And I totally understood after having Kurt talk about it the way that he did. I like got it, and I was like, this is I think if I would have saw it sooner, because I think towards the end of the year, or maybe at the beginning of January. If I would have saw it in like 2022, I think would have. I don't know where it would have fit my top 10, but I think it would have made it in there somewhere if I could have changed some things or saw it earlier. And also, this teaches me
Yeah.
to not if someone is telling you, "Yo, this movie's good," I'm gonna do my best not to like push it off. And if everyone seems like really
Right.
invested in certain movies, like not just like some throwaway like action movie or a Marvel movie or like whatever. If it's like
Right.
something like that, and they're like, "Dude, you need to watch this," I'm gonna do my best not to put it off because I really wish I would have like watched it sooner and actually kind of caught up with the same hype that everyone else had for it when they were like seeing it initially. Like
That would have been awesome for that
I
experience too.
missed the boat a little bit, but I mean, I
Right.
guess we were
Well,
kind of in it together. Yeah.
absolutely. I can totally. I have a couple more watches from last year to get in before I really finalize my best of 2022 list. Like I have a best of list, but I'm gonna probably do some shuffling around to include After Sun. Like it was one that I really, really enjoyed. I'd
Right.
honestly really consider throwing Mad God in that list as well. So two amazing flicks from last year I got in over the weekend. I was very happy to see. But yeah, I should actually share that honestly together soon. Our best of, and maybe around the Oscar time would be great to publish that.
That'd be good too. Yeah. And oh God, all that's coming up so soon too. Like
Yeah,
it seemed,
three
I feel
weeks
like
ish.
I feel like when we started, it was like the award season when we started, like that's when you got on. Award
Right.
season was kind of like kicking off, and now it's like, we had like a lot over the weekend, and even the week before, I didn't mention it when it happened, but I guess it's good we can mention it now. All like a lot of the guilds like had their awards. The DGAs were last week. We didn't mention it last week, but it's a good
Right.
time to mention them now because it's all about everything everywhere all at once, which has suddenly like become like a huge runner now. I don't want to
Right.
jinx it yet, and I know when the Oscars get closer, I guess that would be like the episode after this one, maybe when we'll like have like final predictions on like what our
Right.
choices are. It scored some major wins that has kind of made it like the one to beat. We didn't mention it last week. Daniels won the DGA award, the Director's Guild Award, and that is a huge precursor to who might take the Best Director Oscar.
Right.
So I I'm saying it now. I might change it in a couple of weeks, but I'm throwing all my weight into them for that award and not Spielberg anymore.
Okay.
And it sounds so bad saying it, but
Man, he's got his
that's a
Golden Globe. Like that's great enough.
true, and that's a huge win. The DGA award is a huge win, and it doesn't
Yeah.
always correlate. Like sometimes they go off, and you're like, oh, like it doesn't always match, but it's a really good indication of where it's gonna go. And then the big one that they
Totally.
won too, they won the Producers Guild America Award as well, which is another huge precursor of who might win Best Picture. A lot of people were surprisingly a lot of like big trades were like predicting Top Gun Maverick was going to win that because
Really.
they all have this idea because it saved Hollywood because it made so much money. And yes, this is very true, but like that's not what you're awarding the movie on. Like you're awarding it based on like
Right.
its artistic merit. And I'm not saying that it's not a good movie because it's a very good
No, it's
movie.
amazing.
Like that shouldn't be why there's so many people. That's the reason they're giving like, oh, like Hollywood was in such a bad place because of COVID, and like movie theaters weren't like making money, and like here comes this movie that no one expected to like really, I mean, no one really expected to do the business that it did. And
Right.
yeah, you can praise it on that level, but it also doesn't mean that like you just have to throw a certain award its way
Oh,
because of that.
exactly. I wouldn't
And
want it to be that way.
so that was a huge win, another win for Everything Ever All at Once. And then they had a huge night, SAG Awards last night too.
Saw
So
eyes
they
ones there.
so they won the ensemble award, which is not like a best picture thing. Like that's just like the best performance by a cast, and it's all. And in case
Right.
people don't know, like SAG Awards are voted on by people who are part of that union, the Screen Actors Guild. It's by other actors, so they're being voted on by their peers. Which is for some people, that's why that award is a huge deal because it's like other actors are saying that your work is validated and it's good. So it took that award. I predicted that was going to happen. I felt like the one that it could win because it does have a really great ensemble cast. But then it swept like all the acting awards too. It swept Michelle Yeoh won Best Actress, and we've been saying that this is a toss up between her and Kate Blanchett.
Totally.
And that war is still going strong because Kate Blanchett, I think, won the BAFTA award. They've been switching off, like, and they both won Golden Globes, but like Michelle Yeoh's is in the musical or comedy category, and Kate Blanchett's in drama. So it's still like a tight race, but this is her winning this.
Anyone's race, yeah.
A little closer to that. And then Jamie Lee Curtis was like a huge surprise win in her category because everyone was predicting Angela Bassett to win, and
totally, myself included.
I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Original Halloween, Forever, like horror movies, Final Girl.
Scream Queen.
Scream Queen. I think she's been great in other movies. This still feels like a career kind of award to me.
Right.
We are on the same page. And I kind of feel like her acting peers in SAG voted like that way too. And I don't want to take it away from her because I think like her speech was great, and like, you know, when she said that she was wearing the ring that I think her father gave her mother, because her mom is Janet Leigh from like Psycho, her dad's Tony Curtis, like they're both like old Hollywood. She comes from like very prestigious like pedigree of actors. So like, it was really emotional for her. I mean, I think this whole process has been emotional for her to like kind of share that with her family, even though they're not here anymore. Like, you know, she gets to kind of, and that's the feels part of me, but like the other part of me that's like, you're good in this movie, but I still can't quite understand like where all the like attention is coming from. It feels
I'm not mad about it. I don't get it. Like,
yeah,
I'm on the same page with you. It's like I don't see it, but whatever. I haven't seen Angela Bassett's performance, so I don't have much of a say in that realm. But like, that's who I was naturally leaning towards. I mean, she did get a Globe in that role.
And Critics' Award. It's like it's like one of those things too where they've been switching. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis hasn't won anything yet up until yesterday, I believe. So like that threw a major like wrench, and it's a big one because like SAG is like I said, those people that vote for that are a lot of them are members of the Academy. So like my friend brought up a really good point though. He was like, okay, Oscar voting is still going on as we're recording this. It's still happening.
Right.
There might be people now who like saw Jamie Lee Curtis win and maybe wouldn't have voted for Angela Bassett thinking she was safe. That might switch their votes to Angela Bassett and be like, oh well, I thought she was safe. Maybe she's not. If they wanted to throw their weight into like her again, I still think it's a toss up between those two ladies.
Right.
I think it's Jamie Lee Curtis or Angela Bassett. And, you know, they're both legends. They kept calling Jamie Lee Curtis a legend. And I guess, like, I mean, she has like a few years, maybe 8 or so on Angela Bassett. Not a lot. They're both legends in their own. They're both legends in their own right. So, like, if either one of them won, it would be deserving. There's also a very vocal pocket of people that think that the Academy, no matter how great the performance, does not want to give it for a performance from a Marvel movie. And there's like, you'll see this too as the Oscars get closer. Like, I'll send it to you. The Hollywood Reporter does like the anonymous, like they interview people in the Academy, and they're all anonymous, and they explain they explain why they voted and how they voted, and it is shit like that. They'll be like, well, I mean, we didn't want to give like an award to someone that was in, like when Jennifer Lopez was in Hustlers, she got nominated for everything that year except for the Oscar. And a lot of those people that got interviewed for that Hollywood Reporter story, they were like, yeah, she was great in it, probably deserving, but we did not want to award a stripper movie, even though it wasn't just a stripper movie. That's how all the old people
had that perception, right?
Yeah, looks at it. So like, there's so much that goes into this shit that's not just like, were you good? It's just like it's a lot of variables. And then supporting actor, of course, Ke Huy Quan, who's been sweeping. The only thing he hasn't swept was the BAFTA. As like,
really?
Well, because the BAFTAs mostly went to anyone that was in the Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, that's right.
And like, it's all, you know, that happens a lot with the BAFTAs. It's like their stuff, like
British oriented kind of awards. That makes sense. Yeah.
So Barry Keoghan, is that his name?
He won, or Keegan or whatever.
He won supporting at the BAFTAs. But I still think Ke Huy Quan's going to win the Oscar. He's won everything.
Oh yeah, easy bet.
BAFTA.
If there's one thing I'm going to bet on, it would be him winning that. Yeah,
and I guess kind of a surprise too is now it's a toss up between these two people, but Brendan Fraser won Best Actor over Austin Butler. Dude, I think it's going to come down to the transformative like comeback story performance, and then the transformative you embodied this guy completely performance. Both very deserving and both very good. Some people keep saying you can't count out Colin Farrell. I think at this point you probably can.
I think you can.
And
I love Colin.
Yeah, like I think it's down to those two at this point, Brendan Fraser and Austin Butler.
Right.
but both cool stories for either one of them. Like it's a comeback story for Brendan Fraser. It's like look at this. I mean, he's been acting a while, but like this is his breakout really
Breakout
into
for
like
Austin.
yeah. So like it's a good story either way. I still don't know who I want to throw my weight behind just
Not
yet.
sure, eh?
I'm gonna change. I'm probably gonna. No, I think I need to watch The Whale again.
Okay.
And to like decide, but like yeah, the race got like I don't know, it got really interesting after, and I'm like when it's like that after last night because like I'm like when it's not predictable and that makes it more fun.
Totally.
But like people take this like stuff seriously, man. Like there are people like so invested on social media that work in the industry, like that work for trades that like we're talking shit on people who won. It's just like, what do you have? What stake in the game do you have? And it's like
I get taking it like, taking it or not personally, but like, being very invested in who's winning and following these performances and movies all year round. And you want to see the ones that you want to win. But at the end of the day, why are you going to be mad if someone wins and gets an award and recognition for I don't get that side of things, but I am still very much, I'm on the Brennan train, although Elvis is still on my list. I'm going to get it in before the ceremony, but I'm still like, Brennan just does something in that movie, man. I'm really rooting for that guy.
Yeah, for sure. So the only thing we have, like, I think the big one left before the Oscars is the Writers Guild has their awards. So, this is a good chance for me where I'm just gonna say these two. I think everything everywhere all at once. I think that gets original screenplay.
Oh, totally.
And and that's like a lot of people think if they can actually. So Silence of the Lambs was the last time that like a movie swept like all the major categories where it was Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, and then
The big five.
and then Screenplay Director. If this movie can pull that, Jamie Lee Curtis is the one. I mean, I guess she doesn't have to really win. Like if they could still win the major five without her winning, and it would be the first time since then that like a movie is in a position to like sweep all the major awards. Now, I mean, there's still a lot of time in voting. A lot of people's votes might change because of what they saw last night. That's also probability too. But like certainly, a lot of movie kind of wrote this off as like a little weird like kind of thing that like, and now it's in a position to like kind of take a lot of really major awards. So kudos to
and make history.
Yeah, and I'm glad I'm glad it's not some like Oscar bait movie too. It's like something like really original and different, and like I think that's really cool. Like,
well said. Absolutely, it is great to see all this. And if it does win the big five, it would only be one of 4 films who've ever done it. Which I mean, you always like to see. It's something that a lot of people probably don't even see in their lifetimes. It's like that a movie win the big five. So I haven't yet. So
yeah, so it'd be cool. I mean,
rooting for it.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to remember the TV side. I watched Abbott Elementary. I was happy to see them win the Ensemble Comedy Series award. I also liked White Lotus. Glad that they won the Ensemble Drama Series award as well. Jennifer Coolidge won another Best Actor. Another fun speech that was all over the place, but then somehow coherent, and then somehow really emotional. Like she kind of brings it back eventually, and she's just happy to be there.
Totally.
You can tell that she's really enjoying it. And I actually went on Twitter yesterday, and one of the guys was like, "All right, tell me why I need to watch White Lotus because like I don't understand the hype." I'm like, "Well, you have to watch it first of all," and then I would just say that it's like really interesting, complicated characters, and the acting's really good. Beautiful scenery if you're into that. It's a really well shot show. Season 1 different from season 2, but I thought they were both good. I give season 2 an edge though.
Okay.
But like highly recommended though. Like there's some really good performances, some good writing. Definitely not one to miss out on, I think.
Seems like it's got all the traits of a great show. Like what's not to like, right? I would have read the synopsis once upon a time, but I don't even remember the premise for White Lotus.
It's like an anthology series. So there's a different story for so far for the 2 seasons. They're at these, but they are at these like different resorts, and there's like these different characters who are staying at these places, and you're getting to know like the inner workings of their lives. There's a lot of stuff going on with all of them. So that's like pretty interesting, and I don't know, it's just a really good like ensemble like piece of work. I really enjoy it. I'm just gonna make sure this is pause really quick. 1 second. All right, yeah, you're back. All right, I just want to make sure it paused for a second, so I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah, no, we're all set.
But yeah, highly recommended if you. I know you have a lot you have to watch. There's like a long list, but like if you have time,
I do.
Just sneak it in. You don't have to like binge. It's a really fun show.
And yeah, also, I've been neglecting my TV watching, but I'll add it up there.
Yeah, and also kudos to Jason Bateman, who won a Best Actor in a Drama Series for the final season of Ozark. because I'm a huge
Oh, nice.
Ozark fan.
That's high on
I
my list as well.
love that show, and it was cool to see him win. But yeah, I guess on the movie side of things, it was just like a really interesting show, and like it makes me more excited to watch the Oscars. It's like I don't know. A lot of people have said this is like the most unpredictable like award season they've seen in like a really long time.
Well, hey,
So
I'm
that's
on
good.
board with that. I love not knowing what to expect. Makes things a little bit more exciting, and starting to feel like a little not anxious, but like I guess like a giddy, childlike anxiousness in
Yeah,
anticipation for the ceremony. I am now that it's winding down, and we got as of filming this only 13, yeah, 2 weeks, not three, like
too
I
weak.
said
Yeah.
earlier. That's coming down to the wire,
Yep.
which means I got a busy watch schedule ahead of me because I still got some Best Picture and probably some performance movies I got to get in here too soon.
Well, I guess the only thing you don't have to watch is Avatar. That's not gonna win. So you're cool. You don't have to watch Avatar.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I know it'll get some technical awards, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if I'm gonna carve out the time for it. But yeah.
yeah,
So besides that, I get Women Talking in here soon and Elvis as well shortly. And
yeah.
Blonde, actually. I want to get Blonde in for Anna Darmus's performance.
Oh yeah. So all those are at your fingertips now too. So perfect.
Yes, that's right. Thanks to you. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, I guess we can talk about since we're talking about Oscars and former Oscar winners. There was a big Lord of the Rings. Back in the day was a big Oscar performer. The last movie even won Best Picture. I don't know what to make
Mhm.
of this news. Still, a lot of people are still on the fence.
Oh, I do. Can't
I,
wait.
I can't. So I will just say that Warner Brothers and New Line are looking to return to Middle Earth, and they announced that they have a multi-year pact with Swedish gaming giant Embracer Group, which holds the film rights to the property that will allow them to develop more Lord of the Rings movies. The deal specifically allows Warner Brothers to develop features based on J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit. Embracer Group, the Swedish gaming company, acquired the rights to the Lord of the Rings film, game, merchandise, theme parks, and live productions when it purchased rights holder Middle Earth Enterprises last year from the Saul Giants company. This was all announced during their investor call last week, and this is kind of in line with like what Warner Brothers wants to do. They want to like kind of be back into all these big franchises and big properties because they also brought up Harry Potter and they brought up this, and they were comparing it to like when
Right.
they were comparing it to when they had like the Dark Knight trilogy and all that as well. For those who are confused about the TV show and the movie rights, I guess Amazon does own the TV rights, which is why they're allowed to do the TV show. But the movie rights, they have the rights to all the big name characters that you probably all know and love, like Gandalf, Bilbo, anyone in that realm.
Mhm.
I assumed, and I could be wrong. And I hope I'm wrong, but this felt to me like a sneaky way to try to remake them, and I hope that's not the case because
I think you're right.
there's nothing wrong with the original trilogy at all, and I don't know what else you could do with it. I don't. No one's really explained to me. I've tried to read up everything I can on like what direction they would take it in, but there's no clear direction. So that leaves us to assume what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And I I mean, it's been 20 years now since those movies debuted, and which I guess I could say I'm surprised, like the originals, if
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
indeed what they're doing. I guess I can say I'm surprised that such a lucrative property in this day and age has gone so long without being outwardly remade. I guess we did 10 to 12 years after we did get the Hobbit prequel series, which, to middling reviews. But that was
yeah.
still Lord of the Rings IP that no doubt made tons and tons of money.
Still with Peter
Uh,
Jackson. Too. I mean, at least he was still involved in them. Like,
exactly.
yeah, that. I mean, even if they weren't as good, he was still overseeing it. So he's aware of this, though. He
And
did say
he's
that.
very much a big fan.
Yeah.
Yes.
I,
Guess I on the happier side that he was approached and is like in on that conversation, but I'm like, it's not expecting the same guy to remake these movies 20 years later. I don't really know what that would
no,
add, but I
I don't
also
think
don't
he
want
will.
it. I don't know whose hands I would want that in. I don't know who else I'd want to do those and what their idea would be. Like, what do you do differently with these movies that, in the grand scheme of things, are still very young? Like 20 years in film,
Yeah.
that's a fifth or a sixth of as long as film has even been around. Like, that's not a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I agree. I
So
mean, I guess the frustrating thing to me is like, again, it's in a very different way, but it's the same thing that kind of bothers me. So this news is dropped like during their earnings call when they're talking about like where they're at, financially, like what they hope to gain, like all this other stuff. So Disney did a similar thing when they announced like Toy Story 5 and Frozen 3 and Zootopia 2
Mhm.
right when they announced that they were laying like 7,000 employees off. So like frustrating
Right.
about them announcing this, and like we've talked a lot about like, hey, studios, get behind original ideas, like stop like relying on franchises. And like during that earnings call, like what he mentioned was like, we are trying to get into this like franchise building game again, like when we had all the Harry Potter movies. So they are looking to try to do that stuff with that again, or like when we had the Dark Knight trilogy, and like
Oh.
and Lord of the Rings did like 20 some odd years ago. Like that's great for what it did for you then, but it's like now you're just like another sad realization. Like now we're gonna get ushered in more unoriginal ideas, and like granted, we don't know for sure if they're remaking it, but like
Right.
they're not being very clear about what they're gonna do with the property now. Like what else are you? I mean, can you
What
do with it? Like,
exactly? Well, I don't know what else they have in mind.
and I feel like that's the route they'll try to go. And like,
I think you're right.
to me, those three movies to me are as perfect as you're gonna get, like as far as that's concerned. And like, I was happy to see that a lot of people weren't happy with the news. Like everyone, there were a lot of people that were like skeptical, like us, like what's the point of even like touching this? But like, yeah, I mean, it's all about franchise building. They want to make money on like these IPs that they have the rights to, and they want to do it for while they still hold those rights. And like even if it's to a detriment to like the original material that came before it, like it's just like let that kind of live in its own space where it's like loved and respected. Like I'd rather you give us like numerous like 4K editions, I don't know, of like the old stuff than like give us like brand new like
Yeah.
movies.
Or
Like,
re-release them or something would be super cool. I don't
yeah,
know if
yeah,
that's on the agenda, but
I'd rather see that in theaters than go watch like a new take on Lord of the Rings. I don't know, it's disappointing.
I hear, yeah, I got a question that maybe you could share some insight to. What is their whole idea, or what is the I would not how to phrase this. So you know how sometimes IPs when they're owned, there has to be you have if you own the rights to something, like I know Sony did with Spider-Man when they pumped out the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans, because you have to
Yeah,
put out some content before you lose the rights. Is that
before
sometimes
you
the
lose
case
them,
with
before
IP?
you lose the rights. Yeah,
Could
yeah.
that be part of this conversation, do you think?
Yeah, it could possibly. I because didn't really make clear when they purchased the rights from that Swedish gaming company, like when that happened. But yeah, that could very well be the case too. I mean, that is what happens with like with Sony, and it's the same thing with like before Fox merged with Disney. That was the same thing when they had X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Like
Right.
they had the rights to those, and then they have to like pump out a certain amount of projects, or they could possibly lose the rights. But yeah, man, I like
Yeah.
Owen's a big Lord of the Rings guy too, and like I
Oh,
know
right
that
on.
I know that you are, and like so
Yeah, fresh off the rewatch.
when that story first my email, I was like, I guess I thought like, oh, that's cool. That could be like other Middle Earth stories. But then I'm like reading it more, and I was like, well, what else could you really do with like? I mean, especially since they mentioned like they have like the rights to like all the big name characters and stuff. It's like I can only think of you just
Yeah.
trying to redo what you already did, and that is very disheartening. I don't know. I feel like that's not exciting news, really. It just shows how greedy, I guess,
No,
every
it's
major studio is.
exactly.
Like, sadly, I mean, it's hard to be like
Can't say
pumped
I'm
on it.
surprised, but very hard to be excited for it. I mean, definitely a story to keep an eye on for news and updates going forward, because I can only imagine that somewhere down the line we're gonna get that Lord of the Rings is being remade news, which because again, I don't know what else they're gonna be able to do with that
And,
property.
we're gonna cry. Just,
Maybe maybe we'll give the benefit of the doubt that they'll do something original with it, but hard to imagine what that might be at this point. But I mean, we are ignorant to their ideas behind closed doors, so at this
yeah.
point just speculation. But overall, yeah, I totally agree. I was not excited to be reading that headline, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know what? The only way they can make me excited for it is if they announce it, you gotta announce like a really cool fucking director associated with it. Like me with news I don't want to hear, then hit me with news that I'm like, oh, or maybe. Like it has to be
You're
like
right.
that. It has to be like that. Otherwise, I'm just not gonna be interested in it. Man, I just wish studios would just try. I know sometimes original ideas don't make money, and like I get it, but it's just like bank on another one, because that next one might make money, and then of course they might sequelize it and make it into a franchise. But like, but like,
That's inevitable, but I'd
yeah,
rather an original series trilogy or sequel than rehashing something that already did it and did it perfectly before. Kind of sounded like Steven Dorff here, but It's
Yeah,
just when it's been done and done that well, I just think that you should really, fund an original idea. But I mean, maybe that's just asking studios for too much these days.
I agree. Well, we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. Warner Brothers tread very lightly. Just be careful. I know you don't.
Yeah. Listening to this, Warner Brothers, be careful with
Very careful.
that IP.
Yeah,
You got a lot of fans you're likely to piss off.
yeah. They're already ready with their pitchforks and just ready to like tear you guys down
Yeah.
if you mess it up.
And
They will.
every bit of update and casting decision and whoever they're going to put in the director's chair will be under the microscope and criticized every step along the way. You already know it.
I agree.
As it should.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna throw something at you real quick here. Are you a fan
For sure.
of Tropic Thunder?
I'm a big fan of Tropic Thunder, but that was not always the case. Actually, there's a funny story. My experience with Tropic Thunder. I can still remember watching for the first time. It wasn't actually that. Well, maybe now I could be getting ahead of myself here. It was probably like maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, where I actually consciously watched it for the first time, and I actually didn't really care for it at the time. I think just at that time I was pretty like new in my movie loving experience. Didn't really appreciate, or probably just didn't get how much of a parody on the industry that movie really is. And I soon after got a rewatch of it where I really understood what that movie was trying to say. And I've seen it numerous times since. And goddamn, man, that movie is a treat. And you know me with comedies, it's not my thing, but that's a tried and true comedy that I will go back to often. I love Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one to revisit. I think it turns 15 in August, so that'll be like
that's
really
right.
fun one to revisit. But the news is having us revisit it a lot sooner. And I'm really happy that. So Ben Stiller was responsible for Tropic Thunder. I believe he wrote and directed it, and it's interesting too because like at the time when it came out, we were also in a very different kind of landscape as far as comedy. Like where I don't recall anyone when that movie came out like being like overtly offended by it, like on the stuff that was in it. It wasn't something that was brought up, specifically. A big part of it being like the Robert Downey Jr. Character, the blackface, all that stuff. Now it's not lost to me that like Robert Downey Jr. did get nominated for an Oscar for the movie for playing that part, and there is some fun little yeah.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah,
oh my god.
So there's a whole little funny like, oh, that's interesting, like because the Oscars got blamed for so long for being like so white and not like nominating like people of color, and then like. I mean, whatever. It's a funny performance. It's a funny performance, so it's like whatever. I mean, it's fine. But like at the time, I never.
The optics on that though
are probably not as good. But I guess in this world of like cancel culture, where it's like people are revisiting a lot of stuff from back in the day. Like there are people who have revisited Entourage and find it like extremely like chauvinistic and like misogynistic and like and kind of feel that there's no strong female presence, even though I would implore them to watch it again because there are two very strong females on that show that don't take a lot of their guys' shit on the show. But there's a lot of that stuff that kind of happened, like, and it's in TV and movies, and I think this is one that's kind of it's coming up on its time, I guess. But Ben Stiller says that he makes no apologies for it. He was like, I make no apologies for Tropic Thunder. It's always been a controversial movie since when we opened. Proud of it and the work that everyone did on it. And then he didn't really speak much on it beyond that. I think that was like just enough to be like, if anyone has anything to say about it now. And I guess like there might have been some stuff. There were boycotts from multiple disability advocacy groups, including the Special Olympics for its use of the word used to disparage the mentally disabled. You know what the word is? I won't say it on here, but like, yeah, absolutely. Because of that. So there was other stuff, in regards to like that, and then Robert Downey Jr. character, as we know. But it's also satire and it's parody, and
that's lost on a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, so if you missed that mark, I kind of feel like that's on you if you got offended by it, because like clearly he's not writing it as like an open like. This it's making fun of like different aspects of the industry, and like it is refreshing to see. And I know people like Dave Chappelle haven't made any apologies for like the stuff that they say or do in their acts, but it was nice to see someone else also like not like try to backtrack on like, oh, like maybe we could have done this differently, maybe we I could have like been more sensitive here. It was just nice for him to be like, no, I don't. It's what it is.
It's refreshing, and I commend
I love
him
that.
for sticking to his guns. Absolutely. You don't see that a whole lot. And I think like the abruptness of his comments probably speak to the fact that he doesn't want probably to ignite a huge social media debate and
Right.
war on the merit of his movie. I think he really hit the nail on the head with what he said. He's like, I'm out of it. I wouldn't do it differently. And good for him, because it's
Yeah.
really probably easy to be backed into a corner, especially in if you're responsible for content like that. But
Yeah.
I totally agree with him, and I agree with how he feels. He shouldn't go back on that. So
I
good
agree.
on him.
And just for to put some context in case people haven't seen Tropic Thunder, the Robert Downey Jr. character is an Australian actor named Kirk Lazarus who undergoes cosmetic surgery to darken his skin so he can play a black army sergeant. In the movie within the movie plot, Lazarus continues to wear blackface outside of filming and gets criticized by a black actor for it. Again, when you watch the movie, you really it's poking fun. Like, I mean, it's not supposed to be taken literally, like not seriously. It
Right.
is poking fun at someone that might want to take that on just so they can like get apart and kind of show how like desperate or people in Hollywood can be sometimes in order to like obtain a role. Like it's like there's so many nuances in like the joke, and it's like and like I think that's what people need to kind of realize.
Absolutely.
And yeah, granted, it is the optics, like you said, him getting nominated for it in real life is so funny and
That's
interesting.
crazy. I didn't know that.
But it's you know it's also but first of all, comedic performances rarely get acknowledged by the Academy, so like it's cool that like they did acknowledge one. Now at that
For
time,
sure.
2008, the Academy body was probably a lot of old stuffy white people, so there's that. So I'm just imagining
Yeah,
like
most definitely.
so yeah, I can see where the optics are like this movie's problematic on some levels, but like when you watch it, guys, just know that it's I don't know. Everyone should know the distinction between like when you're watching a comedy, when it's satire, when it's parody, when it's poking fun at something, when it's not to be taken seriously. And I'm really glad that he like you know didn't really apologize for it. And I'm glad that other people supported it. There was one guy that said like, please stop apologizing for doing this movie. It was and still is funny as fuck. Even funnier now with cancel culture the way it is. It's a movie.
Absolutely.
Y'all can just get over it. I was dying laughing when I first saw it back in the day, and so was everyone else. And this was I'm trying to see. Yeah, well, yeah, it's just an older gentleman that was like, yo, you need to stop apologizing for it. It's art, and this is what it is, and like let it be what it was. So many of us when that movie came out in theaters, I saw it opening night, and I remember being in a packed theater and everyone was like cracking up.
That would have been awesome.
So don't privately hate watch it now and be like, oh, I feel so bad. Like it's okay. You can laugh. You can laugh at it.
Yeah.
And like I'm glad the creator of it is also like, no, it is what it is. I'll take my lumps for people that are like offended by it, but like also I think those people that are offended by it just didn't get it, and that's
And that's fine. And
prerogative.
it's okay to have an opinion that is not super praising Tropic Thunder if it's not up your alley. But to judge it on those merits when very much is that to like to advocate that it be canceled or shelved or forgotten in like the cultural landscape, I think is just the wrong opinion to have. And I would die on that hill. It's art, like you said. It means different things to different people, to everybody. And again, it doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from a place of poking fun and exposing the ridiculousness of method acting and the industry and all these, like you said, these other nuances of movie making. And that, at the end of the day, I think it's what it's all about. And Ben Stiller crafted a hilarious movie.
I agree. And by the way, also like through parody and satire, it shines a light on what a real issue might be. So like look at it that way too.
Good
like
point.
So like in a very funny way. I mean, like a lot of these things, like we see it in like horror movies too. There's always like some kind of social commentary in some of them, and like isn't really in other kind of projects. So like like try. I don't want to like feel like bad saying like watch it from a more like intelligent point of view, but like sometimes it's not always just like what it is like on paper and what it's like what you think you're seeing. Like it's poking fun at this thing that is absolutely ridiculous, like it is, but these kind of things exist within the industry, and then maybe that will make you look at like what are they making fun of and why are they making fun of it, and then maybe pointing your attention to how ridiculous that real thing is that they're making fun of, and that's what you should probably like where all your grievances should go. It should go there. So like, yeah, that's where I kind of like stand on it. Don't apologize for anything. It's a funny movie. One of the best movies we've had like the last 15 years. So
absolutely, and one that will definitely stand the test of time. One I'll be certainly watching for years to come and laughing more and more as it gets older. I think it is very much eventually will become a product of its time too, which is always so fascinating. That's what I love about movies, is that you really get a sense, for the most part, not always, but get a sense of the cultural landscape at the time and what was in vogue to make fun of or to poke fun of, or what was, popular. And
Yeah.
I think that is one that does a great job at encapsulating like the scene of movie making in
Yeah.
2008 and
Great.
for decades before that as well.
I agree.
Yeah. Um,
So yeah, what do you got for us?
yeah, we were going
Lob
the
up
same
my way.
direction
I think we were. I think
for
we were. I
sure.
think we were.
Yeah. So recently, another Stephen King adaptation hit theaters. I didn't have a look at how it's doing, but regardless, that's not even what I wanted to talk about. So it's another adaptation of Children of the Corn.
It's probably not
And
good.
I thought no, I don't imagine a lot of his. He's at a time now where a lot of his works are entering their second or third adaptation,
Yeah.
and even some of his earlier adaptations that are kind of like only like kind of mediocrely reviewed are now getting their second wind, and they usually do
Yeah.
even poorer. But regardless, I thought it would be a great opportunity. It's not every day you get a Stephen King adaptation, although so many of his works have been adapted to the screen. I thought it'd be great to shine a light on one of the most acclaimed and celebrated writers, certainly of our time. And
Yeah.
one who's contributed, although he's a writer, he's also directed and contributed much to cinema. And I thought it'd be a good talking point to discuss some of his works, if
Yeah.
that
Well,
was something that, yeah.
for sure. What's crazy about Stephen King is that he's so mean because he's written a lot of scary books, right? But
Right.
he's managed to scare us with some of his other works. He's managed to like, especially when they've been adapted for the big screen, like make a lot of grown men cry. If you're a fan of like Shawshank Redemption or even The Green Mile, or like this is a very diverse writer, and a lot of his stuff has been adapted for the screen. Some of it great, some of it
Not
good,
so much.
some of it very meh, and then some of it
Right.
just flat out garbage. But I what was your first like exposure to him? Like, were you a big like? Did you read a lot of his books like growing up?
I actually only read one Stephen King book, and it was like within the last 4 years or so, and that was Pet Cemetery. And I will say I really, really liked it. I was exposed to a lot of Stephen King novels like in school, and I knew people whose like parents were reading the books, and some of my bookwormy friends had read a couple of his books, but I
Yeah,
just hadn't really picked up. And I had always seen many of his films made about his works, and was always
yeah.
very much a fan of his. Like it makes it looking back, like I've always been such a horror oriented, especially in my youth. Like I was all about scary stories, and I was a big Goosebumps fan. I know that's a far cry from Stephen King, but totally a
Well, he,
preamble into
I think R.L. Stein was our Stephen King. Like when you were a kid, like
exactly.
yeah,
That's a great comparison, very much so.
definitely,
So I'm
definitely.
surprised. And like I was always an avid reader until probably high school is when my movie watching definitely surpassed my book reading, but I always have been a huge bookworm. What surprises me that I didn't read more Stephen King, but I read Pet Cemetery. It was awesome. There's actually a cool couple of shout outs to some of his other works. Like Cujo was mentioned in like a
Yeah.
throwaway line in Pet Cemetery, which is super cool. But yeah, no, only read one book. But what's your experience with him? Do you remember your first Stephen King movie, or did you read any of his books?
I read so when I was in I think a freshman in high school because I was exposed to his movies first. I mean, I knew
Mhm.
he wrote a lot of books, but the first Stephen King book I read was Carrie, and that was because I had
Oh,
just
nice.
seen the movie. I saw Carrie, even though I watched a lot of horror movies when I was a kid. I saw Carrie, I think during my freshman year of high school. That was the first time I ever saw it,
Dude, that
and
would have been an
and
awesome time to see that.
so like it was interesting to read the book, and then like it's a fairly good adaptation of the book. I mean, it's like, and I think it's one of the ones that he's really proud of. I think what they like what Brian De Palma did with that story, and
Right.
as we know, he hasn't always been happy with what directors have done with his books that turn into movies. Uh,
Right.
that
Stanley
was my
Kubrick.
first, yeah, Stanley Kubrick. That was my first exposure to it, and then my second one was Pet Cemetery. That was the second one I read, and then like Misery was third. I think Owen's reading that right now. I think I actually listening to it on audio. Uh, Misery is a really great book as well, and yeah, I mean, like there's a reason they call him like they describe him as like the king of horror. I mean, he has like to be in that guy's brain to how he comes up with like some of these ideas and stuff. It's pretty interesting to me. Like I can't like possibly know what it's like to kind of have like that much content in your head, but he really, I mean, he's full of interesting ideas. I think that's why like sometimes this might be hard to adapt his stuff for like for
Totally.
movies and TV, because he has like so many there's so many different nuances and stuff in his books. But like brilliant mind, really interesting ideas. I'm glad that he just doesn't write like just straight horror fiction when he does write like
Totally.
something like Misery, that was like based on like his kind of inner fear of like someone like being so invested in his material that like they would like seriously kidnap him
Go to extreme
and
lengths.
like go to
Yeah.
extreme lengths to get him to like maybe finish the story the way they thought they should, or like and so that's like it's a horror novel, but like that's his personal horror, like so like he's just like
Absolutely.
so he's playing on like all these different kind of fears and ideas that I think are really, really interesting, that aren't just like straight like horror stuff. And even something like Pet Cemetery, like there's scary elements in it for sure, but like the main fear in that is that like that tragedy of loss, and like dealing with like how do you deal with like your grief, and like
Totally.
the idea of like fully letting someone go, and and if you have the opportunity, no matter how foolish, to bring
Right.
them back, and knowing that they might come back a little different, would you still do it? And I think like even like in movie form, I mean that's like one of my favorite Stephen King like adaptations is Pet Cemetery. Because
Right on.
I think it really drives home that point of like more so like there's some like in the movie there's some gory, creepy stuff in Pet Cemetery,
Really.
but that central idea of like dealing with tragedy and loss, like that is the scariest part of that story, and like how do you handle that, and what do you do when you go through it, and like a lot of the best ideas I think come from like genuine like human fear rather than like
Universal fears and
universal
universal
fear.
experiences that he really is great at tapping into the human experience and taking great themes and ideas that everyone deals with and crafting a
Yeah,
really great, sometimes terrifying, sometimes just scary experience out of them. And I think he's so diverse with his horror. Like I think Misery is a great comparison that you bring up, because it's not like, yeah, it's a probably by all accounts like it's like a thriller. And there's scary aspects of it probably from his perspective, like crazy,
yeah,
dealing with crazy fans and the lengths that they would go to influence your work. But he's kind of really captures the entire spectrum of horror. Like he'll go from not that kind of scary like thrillers to like absolutely some of the most terrifying works of fiction put to screen or put to pen. And on that note, I like in preparation for this conversation, I found a great quote just literally on Wikipedia, on Stephen King's Wikipedia page, that I thought was super, super great. And I wanted to share.
yeah.
It was in response to someone asked why he writes. Stephen King responds, "The answer to that is fairly simple. There was nothing else I was made to do," which I think probably a lot of people who are writers or even in the movie industry very much feel compelled, like this is
Yeah.
their calling. So it's no surprise to see he feels the same way. I was made to write stories and I love to write stories. That's why I do it. I really can't imagine doing anything else, and I can't imagine not doing what I do. And then it says, he is also often asked why he writes such terrifying stories. And he answers with another question: why do you assume I have a choice? I thought that was super cool.
That's really cool, actually.
And
Yeah,
I think that ties into a conversation that my buddy Cam were actually having. I don't know how he came up, but literally, so it was after we watched After Sun. Maybe I'll think of it in mid sentence, but we were talking about Stephen King, and like a lot of the common themes in his work seem to be like tragic stuff. And we were kind of like pondering where we think like what his childhood must have been like and what sort of things he was exposed to. Cause he does have a lot of common themes throughout stories, like a lot, including like alcoholism
no,
and like a lot of like adults kind of being the bad guy and
yeah,
like kids being exposed to like adults in a bad guy sort of scenario.
yeah,
A lot of like really, and like insanity, a lot of the cool themes you'll see in a lot of his work. So like it's only imagine like what that guy grew up like.
yeah.
And so, it would definitely be an interesting insight into what his childhood was. Is that age old expression, you write what you know. Coolly enough, too, so New Brunswick is situated right above Maine, and he's got
Right.
a property. I don't know if it's his main residence. Little pun there. I don't know if it's his primary residence is Maine, but he does have property in Maine. And I've actually seen it a couple times, because it's probably only like 2 or 3 hours from my place. So
Yeah.
seen his property over there. It's pretty cool, and most of his stories take place there too, which is nice. It feels very much like New Brunswick. It's like the same topography, set like geography, climate, all that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
super neat. Got lots
That's
of love
cool.
for Stephen King.
Me too. I also, because like Harry was my first exposure to him, both novel wise and film wise. So like you were talking about the stuff that he writes, and like wondering how he relates to it. But then I was like thinking about Carrie, right? And I was like, well, what can he? We have a female character at like the heart of it. Like, what can he relate to in this and all that? And but book and movie also deals a lot with like a lot of bullying, being ostracized for being different. I mean, that's a universal thing that anyone can relate to.
Absolutely.
And then there's also in that film, like, if you are the one that's ostracized, if you are the one that's bullied, it's, even if it's in your own mind, I mean, maybe go through that whole like revenge fantasy thing in your brain where it's like,
No doubt.
if you have the ability, of course, what she ends up doing at the prom, to do that to the people that have like wronged you, like, would you do that? And it's like a really interesting like kind of thing, and I think that's what he kind of related to in the story. And he almost like when he talked about Carrie, he said that he almost stopped writing it because he was like, at first he couldn't. He's right, as a female character, and like he didn't know how much like empathy you could have, but like his wife convinced him to finish it, and then he ended up basing
Right.
Carrie on like two girls that he knew in high school, and like kind of was able to finish it based on that. But like, even when like maybe he can't really identify with the central character, he can still identify with like the themes surrounding the central character and write them really well. And like that's why I think too, like me, like a lot of the authors who are like him, your best stuff can still be adapted and translated like even today and like make sense. Because I remember when they remade Carrie, I didn't love it, but like the
Right.
one thing that stood out about the movie though is that in real life there are still so many kids that still are dealing with like being bullied in high school and stuff like that, and like that is still a universal thing that people can still relate to. And so like,
Timeless.
so I and like I feel like a lot of ways that's gotten worse as years have progressed with kids in
Mm.
school. So like when I watched the remake, I remember thinking it's not as good as the original, like at all.
Right.
But that central idea though is what made me like it even a little bit. Was like that
Right.
idea of like I can still relate to this. So I'm like, and since it's set in like a modern setting, and then like and they were able to, it's not a '70s movie. It does hit a certain different way when it's like the setting and like the circumstances are more attainable and relatable to you. So like and that's just the power of like his writing though. I mean like it's like someone like Shakespeare, like you can still adapt like Shakespeare stuff, and like there's all these like there's a lot of like modern day adaptations of his work, and
Absolutely.
that's because all those themes still work today. and
Exactly.
and I think that's what he's really good at, and there's a reason why everyone wants to tackle his stuff. I want to know, are you familiar with his whole thing about like the dollar, like people can like adapt his stories, and this has gone on for like a long time, where like why so many people are able to do like short films and stuff based on his work and not get in trouble for it. He has this thing. I want to look up the exact wording of it, but I thought it was so interesting when so many people want like a ton of money for the rights to their stuff.
Right.
It's called like the Dollar Baby, and like a lot of his stories are under titles for under that can be adapted for just $1.
Oh,
And
wow.
says these stories are not under contract for movies, which means they are available for film students who want to try their hands at a Stephen King story. If you want to be one of my
What?
dollar babies, send us your info, and that's signed by Stephen King. So there's like a list of like movies and stuff that like you can use, like some of his stories, like short stories. I mean, that like
Wow.
film students, if they want to like take a crack at like adapting one of his short stories, they can do it just for $1. And I thought
That is
that was like,
super neat.
and all you do is like you send in your request to him specifically through his website, and you're able to like do that. Because I was wondering, like, there's so many different ones that pop up on YouTube, and that's where that all kind of comes from. So I think it's cool that he encourages that kind of creativity. Now, of course, like a lot of them aren't like the biggies, but like I think it's still cool that
Right.
like if it's short stories, they're still his babies, that he's
Oh,
like willing to like
absolutely.
take a crack at it for $1 and see what
That
you
is
can
the
do with
first
it.
I've heard of that. That is super, super honorable or noble an
Yeah,
initiative that he does. I had never heard of that, but that
yeah.
is super cool.
And to like piggyback off that too, I also think it's cool to watch him on Twitter, like after the Black Phone came out, like
Mm,
to watch
yeah.
him like praise other people's work in that genre, where it's just like I just saw this and thought it was like one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Like he frequently does that when he sees something that other people have done that he thinks is really good. And I'm sure as a writer, even a director, whatever, if you're getting like kudos from Stephen King on your work, that has to like mean
Imagine
the
that
world.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's cool that he's still done like that. But yeah, I want to bring that up because like it's something I think it's really cool for like up and coming film students that they can like take like, one of his like titles that he has on his webpage and be like the
I
low
mean,
low
that is
price of
something I'm
one
gonna
dollar.
Yeah,
Just
I'm absolutely going to explore that. I'd be curious to see like what sort of material is up for grabs there. And like that's awesome to shout that out because I'm sure there may be even some aspiring filmmakers one day that did not know about that who
yeah.
now know where to go look for some content to adapt, which is again super. I don't feel like maybe other people have done that, but not that I've heard of. That seems
Yeah,
unheard of
he's
to
the
me.
only. I mean, I'm sure maybe someone else might have, but he's the one I know. Like,
Right.
it's a big deal that he does. And yeah, it's when I first found that out, I was like, that's so fucking cool that like he's putting like some of his work out there for people to like. And who knows, you might make like a Stephen King like short film in your film class, and like right person would see it, and then
Exactly. The
you put them
catalyst
into like,
for a career.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fucking awesome. Yeah, I know that's really cool that he does that.
On the note of people adapting his work, when I was scrolling through his Wikipedia page, I couldn't help but notice this. Get a look at the first four of the first five of his books that were adapted and the people who made them. This is absolutely insane. So
Yeah,
as you mentioned, I've seen like Brian De Palma did Carrie. That was his first book of his that was adapted in
yeah,
1976.
yeah.
So his first adaptation is by great Brian De Palma. The second one of his works to be adapted was The Shining by, of course, Stanley Kubrick. So that is a bang and start.
Yeah.
I'm a little ignorant to Louis Teague. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's the guy that did Cujo, and so he
Kudo,
had three books adapted in 1983. David Cronenberg did The Dead Zone, and John Carpenter did Christine. So
Christine.
of the first five of his books adapted, of several that ended up happening, the first four of those five were Brian De Palma, Stanley Kubrick, David Cronenberg, and John Carpenter, who are all legends in their own right in the filmmaking
Yeah.
world, which just thought that is absolutely insane. And then I've done a little other list too of some other people that had done adapted some of his works. That includes Frank Darabont, Rob Reiner, George Romero, Toby Hooper, Mike Flanagan, and then the other four that I had mentioned as well in the Kubrick, David Cronenberg, Brian De Palma, and John Carpenter. That is an impressive list for
Yeah.
even if you could, it sounds like several people's works could have been adapted by those people, but for all those directors to have just adapted one person's writing is unmatched. Just really a testament to the longevity of his writing career,
No, yeah.
which there's really nobody else like him in the game, I don't think, and we'll probably never get another Stephen King.
I agree. I would be remiss not to bring up the Stanley. I think it's such an interesting
Yes, please do.
thing because for horror fans, The Shining is considered one of the scariest movies ever made. Like a lot of horror fans love The Shining. I love The Shining. It's
One of
really
my
long,
all-time favorite.
very very
Yeah, it
long,
is long, but I
but
love
it's
every
I
friggin' minute of it.
every moment of it. But I didn't find out for like a really long time that Stephen King didn't like it, and
Right.
you know, and it's really interesting when the person who wrote the source material is like that adaptation of my work is not. Uh, so I went to look up why, and it says that Stephen King hated Kubrick's adaptation so much that he made a 3-episode horror miniseries on his own novel in 1997. I remember when that was actually on TV. I think it was ABC.
Oh, wow.
It says it's safe to say that even though the 1997 effort was more faithful to King's book, it had none of the cinematic artistry of Kubrick's film. This is what this person said in Far Out magazine. But King elaborated on what he didn't like. He said the differences between Kubrick's film and his book was that he said that's what's wrong with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Basically, the movie has no heart. There's no center to the picture. I wrote the book as a tragedy, and if it was a tragedy, it's because all the people loved each other. Here it seemed there's no tragedy because there's nothing to be lost. And it says to this day, many fans are divided between Stanley Kubrick's interpretation of The Shining and Stephen King's source material. While some prefer King's characterizations and the moral framework he used in the book, many prominent horror filmmakers such as Jordan Peele continue to study Kubrick's 1980 masterpiece as a definitive take on the genre. And Kubrick's visual stylizations and his construction of atmospheric horror remain an indispensable part of the evolution of horror cinema. So there's lots to take
There's
out there.
lots. Yeah. I had known that he had adapted and like remade The Shining in his own sort of spin on it. Would
Yeah.
actually love to check it out sometime, even if I'm not expecting to really like it that much, just because he's not the whiz behind the camera that Stanley Kubrick is. But he's directed before things that I've enjoyed. I don't know if you've ever seen Maximum Overdrive, is a movie of his that he directed.
That's a guilty pleasure for a lot of people because I know some people think it's awful and other people are like, no, it's like so easy, it's kind of fun.
It's like so 80s it hurts. Like it's got a lot of merits to it. I honestly really remember enjoying that movie, but one of these days I would absolutely love to check out his adaptation of his own work. That obviously tells a whole different story by the sounds of things. And The Shining would be high on my list of like Stephen King books that I would actually really want to read. But as such a massive fan of Kubrick's interpretation. I think be a little bit disadvantaged watching his version because like I've already seen it so many times that is my definitive version, and no doubt it has inspired a whole generation of horror filmmakers. So it is definitely something special. What else? There was something else I wanted to mention about Stephen King, but I think it kind of escapes me at this time. But I do remember recently when I'd watched Get Out, and see how it inspired Jordan Peele as he like the opening credits are in the same like cyan blue color that they are in The Shining, which is super a cool little touch.
So what are, if you had to have like a top 3, top 5 like adaptations of his
just
work?
On the top of my head, I honestly I didn't really take stock of this beforehand, but like that comes to mind. The Shining is absolutely up there. I would be insane not to include The Shawshank Redemption because as beloved as that movie is, it deserves all the praise it ever gets, and it's one of those not rare by any means, but one of the lesser known, but the drama of his, like he does plenty of dramas, but he is very much renowned as a horror author. But again, one of his greatest works is human drama, and then I would say, not that this movie needs a soft spot or anything, but I hold so dear to my heart Stand By Me, which is adapted from his, I don't know if it's a regular length story or it's a short The Body, right? That is, I'd say those would be my top 3. Stand By Me is just, I don't know where it is, and I saw it for the first time, but over the years I've seen it so many times. It's something I really, really enjoy going back to. And I really like The Mist as well. I like the story more than the execution, but the story of The Mist is one I've always really enjoyed as well.
I will ride hard for that film because I appreciate doing what it did at the end, because I know a lot of people hate the ending of that movie because it's pretty fucking dark. But
Steven himself likes it more than his own, which is super cool.
Because director Frank Darabont was like, he was like, this is the ending. Like, we have to, like, they wanted him to change it. They were like, this is not, it's too dark. And I'm glad that they went with it. And like, there's numerous like YouTube videos where people are like, go back and forth about like, they either go all in for it or they are like, too much. When I first saw the movie, it was a bunch, and I was like, oh shit. But I respected the hell out of them for like going there. I kind of feel like that's why that movie didn't do well, because it is a very bleak ending. That's actually one of my favorite adaptations of his work too. I think the years have been kinder to it. Like more people like kind of discover it and just appreciate what that respect someone for like not giving you a cookie cutter like Hollywood movie ending. I mean, God, because like it happens. It's like just moments later, you're like, oh, just wait like a little bit longer.
And one that will go down in history as one of the most like divisive and like gut wrenching endings ever. So yeah, again, kudos to Frank Darabont for sticking by that, and to get that praise from Stephen King himself, saying, I don't remember verbatim what he said, but I remember him saying something along the lines of, "I wish I had thought of that ending," because he liked it so much. Like that is the ultimate praise.
Yeah, let's see if I can find what he said about it. But yeah, I mean, I also don't know sometimes how to like rank his stuff, because
it's hard, right?
I always think of his horror stuff, and I'm like, oh, I can rank that. But then, like, how do you not put Shawshank Redemption at like number 1? Because it's like one of the greatest movies like ever made, right? So it's like, it's hard not to like want to be like, all right, I can't like put Carrie above Shawshank Redemption,
right?
So that's like, I tend to like be like, all right, this is like my favorite like horror stuff that he does. And then
I think you can separate his dramas from his horrors. I wouldn't take away points for doing that because they are so distinctly different, and he's so good at telling both sorts of stories. And 3 is not really a big enough number. I actually feel guilty for not mentioning Misery in there, because I saw that for the first time like last year, maybe 2 years ago, and was really, really enjoyed that. I think it was maybe shortly after James Caan's death that I saw it, but that was so good.
Oh, I do want to bring it back to what he said about ending The Mist really quick. He said when Frank was interested in The Mist, one of the things that he insisted on was that it would have some kind of an ending, which the story doesn't have. It just sort of peters off into nothing, where these people are stuck in the mist and they're out of gas and the monsters are around and you don't know what's going to happen next. When Frank said that he wanted to do the ending that he was going to do, I was totally down with that. I thought that was terrific, and it was so anti-Hollywood, anti-everything, really. It was nihilistic. I like that. So I said, you go ahead and you do it. And I think that's like awesome.
That, I mean, what more could you want said about if you're going to change the ending? Like that is exactly what I'd want to hear about my vision, which is super cool. I like a nihilistic ending too. I mean, maybe I don't know where that comes from, but like I feel like the happy ending is so overdone and so commonplace that like it's kind of
Really is.
refreshing to have sort of like the
But
bad ending, if you will. But
yeah,
no, I really like that about the Mist too.
I agree. So I'm trying to figure.
Yeah, what do you rank them?
All right. Am I separating drama from horror, or am I
Yeah, go
doing all?
ahead.
All right. If I'm just doing
However you
his
want to do it.
horror adaptations, oddly enough, I like Carrie a little bit more than The Shining. I think because it's like an easier watch. I mean, because The Shining is really long. I do appreciate it for horror
For
cinema though.
sure.
Actually, they both did really big things for horror cinema in their own right. I mean, uh, but I think Carrie, The Shining, Pet Cemetery, uh, Christine,
I was gonna say Christine too. I wish I had mentioned that.
and Cujo. I think I would do like as far as the horror stuff.
Okay, I haven't seen
I'll,
Cujo.
Oh wait, you know what? Actually, you know what? Knock out Cujo. I'll throw in the Mist, even though it's based on his novella. I'll throw in the Mist at the end,
Okay,
and Cujo will be an
nice.
honorable mention. Uh, and then I guess on like the drama side, like I said, Shawshank Redemption is like a great movie, so that's one. Stand by Me, I probably
So
put in
so
second.
good.
The Green Mile would probably come after that. That's
Sure.
all I can really think of at the moment. But like those would be. I grew up with Stand by Me. I love that movie. I mean, it's
Right.
such a really everyone in that movie is like those kids were like acting like they were like
Laughing
pros.
their asses off.
Asses
Yeah,
off. Yeah. I don't know what I mean. Of course, later you find out some of them, they had really tragic lives. River Phoenix and very like
totally.
but they were tapping into some real raw human emotions in that movie. I also think it's interesting too because as much as Stephen King's adaptations have given us really good stuff, it's also been some like some
Stinkers.
hot garbage.
Yeah.
Like Firestarter failed us twice. Like I'm not like a big fan of like the original, and I don't really like uh, the Zac Efron remake.
No,
Although I'm glad they rescinded this. I'm glad that little girl did not deserve a Razzie nomination for
exactly. I
the
agree.
performance in it. This wasn't a good movie.
Totally.
Children of the Corn. I mean, the only scary thing about Children of the Corn, like the original key art that's on like the VHS, was has like it's like them holding like the like whatever the
The
up in
scythe
the
or
air.
whatever.
It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like up in the air. That image alone is like kind of creepy. The movie
Totally.
itself, like I don't know, I saw it late. That could have been. I saw that I was in my early 20s, I think, when I saw it,
Right. I
and
don't
it's
think it'd
really
scare me at this
it's
point.
really cheesy and dated.
Yeah.
Though I like watching it and making fun of it. Like that was a movie I used to watch with my friend a lot. That was like, dude, let's watch like Children of the Corn, just like fucking roast it because it is a very easy movie to roast. And then there's like Sleepwalkers. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but like it's really bad.
Heard of it? I don't think I've seen it.
There's a scene where like one of the killers like stabs one of the like cops with like corn on the cob, like in the chest. In the chest. It's so bad.
What the hell?
And then like Thinner. I'm not a fan of that. I don't know if you've ever
Right.
seen that.
I remember catching a little bit on that on like cable television when I was a kid, and that's the one with like the pie, right?
Yeah, that's a hot mess of a movie.
Right. Yeah. I don't remember much from it, but I remember being like, "What the hell is this?"
I'm trying to think of something else. I mean, I'm sure there's other. I mean, I wonder
There's
if I just
plenty.
typed in bad Stephen King adaptations, like what would
When
come
you
up?
pump out as much material as he has, you're bound to get some bad interpretations, some bad adaptations of your work. And that's not to say
Yeah,
I'm sure the stories are good on paper, but a
yeah,
lot can be missed in that translation from paper to screen.
I agree. The Lawnmower Man's another one. I just saw it pop up
Never
here.
even heard
Yeah,
of that one.
it's
God.
it's it's no good. Oh well, you know what? Yeah, I guess like so. Going back, so I named the dramas. I guess Misery's more of the drama one. It's not really horror.
Yeah,
I guess
it's a
that
thriller,
situation.
drama
I guess
thriller.
that situation is scary, but like, so yeah, I would throw that in after ahead of the Green Mile. So yeah,
Okay,
so like
nice.
Shawshank, Stand by Me, Misery, Green Mile.
Back to Stand By Me for a sec. There was a point I want to bring up if you'd heard this story. I don't remember the actor's name that played Vern. But did you ever hear that story about that actor accidentally eating like a pot cookie or a pot brownie
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
set? Yeah, and they just found him like probably like a mess. He probably would have been like high out of his mind. Probably, and he was like
Definitely.
10 or something. Thought that story is so funny, but he
It's also the '80s. They like watching
eh,
people on set, especially
right, no,
kids. It's
exactly.
so bad. It's so bad. Uh,
That's so funny.
and then there's stuff like, God, you know what? I might have to change my horror rating because I just forgot about it.
Oh my god, yeah. How did that not come
I might
up?
have to like, so fuck.
See, that's
All right,
what I love about this guy.
all right, buy the miss, and then we'll throw in
Sure.
at least it chapter one. And
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
like, the original miniseries is creepy. It doesn't hold up well to me now because it's so dated. But
Okay.
when I was a kid, it definitely scared me. Uh,
Sure.
but it chapter one is a really solid. adaptation of his work. Chapter 2, I still liked. I just didn't like it as much as
I
chapter 1.
agree. It's not taken away from it. It just wasn't as good as the first half, and that's fine. That happens a lot. It was on the lengthier side too, and they just kind of do some things in that movie. I'm like, meh.
Yeah, there's some
But
choices
still,
made. We're like,
yeah, there's some choices, but still like awesome. You don't get nearly enough Pennywise as you should, but that's what's so great about the first one is he's all over the place.
agree. And I will
Yeah,
also say one of his more interesting adaptations. It's hit or miss for some people, but it's a movie called At Pupil with Ian McKellen and Brad Renfro. Like
Okay.
Brad Renfro plays this high school student, and there's this former like neo-Nazi that's staying next door to him. He lives next door, and like he discovers that he is one, and he instead of like kind of like he wants to learn from him, like he wants him to
Right.
tell him all the things that he did, like back then, and like it becomes this kind of really interesting psychological tug of war between this high school student and
Okay.
older or miss for some people, but I thought it was like a really interesting, really interesting. It was marketed way wrong when it came out. They marketed it as like a horror movie, and it's really not. It's like a psychological like thriller. It was the movie After Usual Suspects. Ryan Singer, that was his
Right.
movie after
Yes.
that.
I was waiting to see who had done that. And J.K. Simmons plays the skinhead, right?
Yeah, so like
That's super cool.
It's like I really really enjoy it. It's not for everyone, but one that I think you might be interested in if you were thinking of one that's like.
When I was going through his works there, one stood out to me when I saw that Bryan Singer had done it, that J.K. Simmons was in it, and the role he was playing. I was like, that stood out. I would definitely try to track that down sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, very versatile dude, man. Like and then some of his stuff will work really well in TV show. Like I didn't like the Dark Tower movie adaptation, but I'm excited for it. What they're gonna do with it on Prime, like Amazon. Like
I think it deserves a television series more
because there's so much material in that.
Right.
Like I think that like TV treatment is much better for like some of those stories. But yeah, he just has like, oh, I forgot about this one too, Secret Window. That's also not for everyone, but I really like it.
I forgot that was
Johnny Depp is in it.
I didn't realize that was Stephen King.
Yeah, I love the twist ending so much. And like that's what I mean. That's if you're feeling like kind of like, oh, this movie is so. I just hang on until the ending because I think it really pays off. I need to stop scrolling before I discover more. All right.
I know there's just so much in there. Like I can't believe we forgot it as long as we did, but like we're bound to come across even more of his works.
And, no,
the guy like he's just so versatile.
We're gonna totally like put it out there on the socials. Like questions like, what is your? I mean, we're gonna do both. We're gonna do your favorite Stephen King adaptation, your least favorite, and
totally.
Then we'll read some of them off at the top of the next episode.
That's a great idea.
Be really good. Did you see the Pet Cemetery that they did?
Yes, I did. I actually saw the original and the remake kind of shortly after one another. I didn't like the people in the remake, but I didn't really care for the story. Sorry for the remake. I like the story, and having read the book, it was like from what I remember, for the most part, faithful, but just didn't do anything for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How did you feel about them switching? Because in the original one, it's the little boy, the kid, Gage.
Yeah.
And in this one, they made it the daughter. How did you feel about that change?
I can respect that they wanted to do something different and didn't want to just carbon copy the first one. There's something to appreciate there. I guess I kind of felt indifferent about it. Like overall, the remake in general, I just didn't really care for. So they could have made any changes, and I would have been like, yeah, it wasn't impactful enough for me that I was like, oh, that's a great move. I thought I appreciate the change though, because beyond that, from what I remember anyway, it's been a while now. I don't remember there being too many differences. Yeah. So, good for them for, thinking of something to do differently.
Yeah, I appreciate the change too, because I was like, well, at least, if you're going to remake it, try to make something different. I think the one aspect of it I did appreciate was since she was older, like the communication, like the things that she could say and do.
Right.
It was scary, is creepy in its own right. But then also the original, having someone as young as Miko Hughes, who played Gage at the time, that is also really creepy in a very different way. And honestly, like every time I watch that movie, and it's not like that movie's known for like big emotional moments. When Gage is killed,
right?
It's such a big, like, impactful like moment when it happens.
Wait till you read it, dude. Very descriptive.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah. It's it's very descriptive. Yeah.
One of the moments I remember the most.
And like in the movie, I was just like, it always hits me like hard. And Nico Hughes says that he doesn't remember. I mean, he was also in like Kindergarten Cop and like Wes Craven's New Nightmare when
Oh,
he was
cool.
a kid. He said he doesn't remember much about making Pet Cemetery.
Right.
But everyone on set, like director Mary Lambert, also another female director that took on that movie. You don't get that a lot in horror, a lot. Uh, but he was just saying that like he was so game to do whatever they needed him to do, and they
Cool.
had to make it like a game. Like it wasn't like he was doing anything evil, and there were certain things that they, of course, wouldn't let him do because he was a child. But there were
Right.
certain close-up shots where they had to like when he goes at like dude's neck after he cuts like his they had to just
Oh,
they had to go in for like the close
Achilles
up
tendon
and
scene.
yeah,
Oh,
but they were just like he was so
oh,
they said his parents were like he was so unaffected by it because he was so young that he had no, it was just a game. But they said like even though he was so young, he was very intuitive about what they needed him to do on set. Like he was a very like natural kid performer. It's not like he does anything exceptionally great. He's just a cute kid, but like
yeah.
I get like he did what he needed him to do, and he was like for his age was just very like easy to like kind of direct, and like he was willing to do anything they needed him to do.
Right.
So, but I just think it's cool. He's like so many people ask me about that movie, and they're like, I just don't. I was so young, I don't remember anything about making it.
Not
Like,
surprising.
but yeah, I thought that was interesting because like that change was like really controversial when the remake came out. There were some people that liked it,
Oh, was it?
some people
Supposed.
that
Yeah. I guess I
yeah.
wasn't
And
in.
they
Wasn't
gave it.
aware.
They also gave it away in the trailer. I don't know if you remember when the trailer came
Yeah.
out. They gave
Yeah.
that
I do
away
remember
right
that. Like,
away.
what the
And
hell?
yeah, but yeah,
Mistake.
fun. Yeah, but we'll definitely throw those questions out there for you guys. We're very interested in what you think about his work. He has so much stuff to cover, and like one of the great literary minds of our time, man. Like, I mean,
I
he
once.
like
Yeah.
I said, he has so many things out there that everything's not going to hit for you, but like his hits are like far surpass like whatever miss he might have. And
Absolutely.
I love that he's still writing. Like he could easily just rest on his laurels and just be like, I've put out so many good things and like it be. But
Right.
like he has so many things like adaptations of his that are in the works. I mean, I a long list to go on, but like there's a lot of
For
stuff
sure.
that's coming down that he's attached to that are all adaptations of his work. And here we are in 2023, and people are still like adapting his stuff. So that's like the power of him as a writer and creator, and a lot of people can't say that, and that's what I
Exactly.
love from.
He really is a once in a generation, if not like a once in a lifetime, sort of like literary mind. Like you said, we will. I don't think we'll ever, not in our lifetime, get another Stephen King, someone so
Yeah,
impactful in both the writing and the filmmaking realms. So it only feel natural that we got to shout out our boy like that, give him some love because he really has had quite an impact on especially horror cinema,
yeah, I
which is
agree.
something we're both big fans of.
Yeah,
So yeah,
all right, yeah, I agree. That was a good one. I like talking about like, yeah, I can talk. I mean, and there's probably stuff like movies of his that we can like dive into individually. That will be like so
I'm
interesting to
sure that will happen.
like dissect and like yeah, because yeah, it's a brilliant mind on that one. But
Absolutely,
to close this off here, it's always box office, and we'll do this really quick. I
for sure.
finally got one right. Uh,
There you go.
uh,
Well
Cocaine Bear,
done.
Cocaine Bear came out the weekend. Boy Jackson here said $30 million opening weekend, and I can respect that because I could have seen it going
I
as
had a
high.
feeling.
Uh, it debuted to 23.1 million. I said 23. I'm calling that as close enough. So
Oh,
kudos,
that is super
kudos to me.
close. Closer than I would have had last week when I was right about. I don't even know what I got right, but very, very
Yeah,
impressive.
you were really close with Ant Man. Like it
Ant
was
Man,
like
right?
yeah. So
Right.
kind of give you what a lot of other people said. At Drew Review 77 said 22.5 million, so pretty close. At Darren Movie Review said 15 million. My boy David Clark said 25 million. SC Movie Guy 17 million. These are all kind of close. My friend Stefa,
Yeah.
a lot. Thank you, Stefa, for your contribution. Jordan underscore M85 said 20 million. Our
Okay.
boy, our boy Owen said 44 million. That was really high, but
Whoa, we.
I could have
I could
seen
have
it
seen
maybe
it.
doing.
Yeah.
And then at Hardwell 123 said between 30 and 40 million. So he was like trying to gauge it.
I was thinking 30 was going to be on the lower side too. Like I think 23 is a great opening for that movie, but I was expecting more. I don't think in any way is it disappointing, but I think it'll probably go on to have a good box office run because it seems like it's getting good word of mouth.
I think so too. And other quick little box office news, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania had the biggest second weekend MCU drop so far it fell 60. Let me get it right. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Whoa.
It declined 69.9% from its opening weekend. It
Almost
grossed
70%.
Yeah, it grossed 31.9 million this weekend. Still number one. It's grossed 167 million domestically to date and 363.2 million worldwide. I mean, I'm gonna assume since they had kind of franchise best opening last week, and then they had this huge drop this week. I think every MCU fan rushed out opening weekend, and I think what this drop kind of shows, yeah, it might be quality, but I think it also didn't. It just didn't like grab anyone outside of people who love these movies.
Right.
I even heard someone say that like it's been a detriment to the MCU that they haven't ended each phase with like a big Avengers movie. Like they've been doing all these like individual movies and like maybe some work for some don't.
Right.
I still like we mentioned last week, I'm not counting them out because their next release is Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think that turns it around them.
Yeah, it's not enough yet to really say that this is like a downfall. Like you see some people say, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's not indicative of if things do not change that this could be a trend we see going forward if things are adjusted.
Yeah, that's very fair to say. I actually think that's really fair to go because like the people are saying that too. It's like you can't like kind of be like, oh, like we're kind of untouchable. It's like, this kind of shows that like there are like kind of there's definitely room for you guys to get hurt. You kind of like on top of like the projects you're making.
The numbers will speak for themselves.
Nobody at Marvel is excited with a 69.9% second weekend drop.
The fact that number one though is like impressive. It's still obviously making the money. That is a crazy drop to still maintain that number one spot.
Yeah, and especially like March is stacked with movies, and it's got a lot of competition in the coming weeks. So we'll see how it does. And also, I'm not a big fan of a lot of faith-based movies, but I'm going to bring it up just really quickly. There's this movie called Jesus Revolution that came out this weekend. I didn't know anything about it, but it debuted at number 3 with 15.8 million. I always underestimate these faith-based release movies, but they always have like a huge opening. Like there's always like an audience for it. So kudos to the makers of that movie. Again, just gonna shout out my boy Puss in Boots, still in the top 5.
Holy smokes, man, that is insane. How many weeks is this now?
So it's been out for, let's see. So it's oh god, let me see. I'm trying to see. 10 weeks. It's been out for 10 weeks.
Okay, that's what I was like in that ballpark gonna guess.
Yeah,
like I was gonna say
it came out a week before Avatar. Avatar's still in the top 5 too. It made $4.1 million this weekend, down just 22.8%. 173.4 million domestic so far, and
that crew's got to be happy.
And a worldwide gross of 442.7 million. It is actually speaking of Oscars, it's by far the highest grossing animated film that of the nominees for best animated feature this year. So that's crazy. Good for you, Puss in Boots. So we have one to predict this weekend, and I will give you a little basis to kind of what to base this on. Creed, while Creed is a part of the Rocky universe, I guess the best ones for you to look at will be Creed 1 and Creed 2, not the Rocky films as a whole. So Creed 3 is opening on March 3rd. Early reviews are really good. That will propel a lot of business, I think, towards the movie.
I think so too. Yep.
But the original Creed, released in 2015, opened to 29.6 million, grossed 109 million US by the end of its run, and 173.5 million worldwide on a $35 million budget. And then Creed 2, I clicked Creed 3 by mistake, my bad guys. I was like Creed 2 came out in 2023? No, it didn't. Creed 2 came out in 2018, opened to $35.5 million, so higher than the original. Ended up grossing 115.7 million by the end of its run in the States, and then 214.2 million worldwide, a $50 million budget. Also, some things to consider. I don't want to sway your decision either way. No Sylvester Stallone in Creed 3.
That I knew. That's right.
The first two had him in it. So this is very much all Creed's story. This is all Michael B. Jordan's movie. Right. Has Jonathan Majors in it, who's like a big deal right now. Also pretty good early reviews. So compared to the openings of the first two, like what are you calling? What do you think it's going to open to?
A big factor too in my decision here is that as you mentioned, it's been 5 years since the last one. I know the first two are like pretty well received, so I imagine there's a lot of anticipation for this third one. That being said, again, I know probably audience knows that there's no Sylvester Stallone in this sequel, and it is Michael B. Jordan's debut behind the camera. That is, I mean, I don't really know if I think his debut is gonna be a good or bad thing, or if it's even gonna be a factor for people going to see it. Probably not people beyond like cinephiles and stuff. I'm excited to see what he can do. And I watched Chris Stuckman's video, and he seemed to praise it a lot. I'm gonna go with a cool $44 million opening. I'm gonna write that down so I know next week. So yeah, I'm going for 44 million for.
I always have to like remind him about what he said. I'm like, what you said
What
this. Like, oh wow, okay.
What are you thinking? I'm glad I get to go first because you have more of an informed opinion. So I'm not influenced by it. So I like that I get to go first with this sort of thing. I don't know. Did you have a number in mind before?
I had it matching the second one, like 35 million.
Okay.
But Michael B. Jordan's pretty popular.
Yes.
And these movies have gotten more popular. And then like, if it's going in the trajectory of like the first one opened to 29, the second one opened to 35. They've each gotten it got higher with the second movie. I mean, it might get higher with the third.
I'll acknowledge I am going on the higher end here. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if it's like, I'm thinking it's going to open above the second, but maybe not by 9 million more, but that's on the higher end. I acknowledge that.
Right. I'm going to go with even 40.
Okay. I like that.
$40 million.
Probably more realistic.
We shall see who gets this one right this week. I'm feeling pretty confident after my Cocaine Bear win.
Yeah, exactly. So you're riding the high, and we're pretty much evenly matched now in terms of our guesses. So after this weekend.
Got it so wrong the first time.
Yeah, we both did, honestly.
Yeah, like I'll throw it out there. We'll ask you what do you think this film is going to open to on opening weekend, and we'll get all your guesses and then read them on the next episode when the box office results are released. And yeah, I think that covers. I think
that covers it.
Yeah, it's another fun one with my boy Jackson. I do want to kind of tease. People keep asking. Owen is going to be on the main show very soon. Actually. Well, by the time you hear this, will be March. So this month, and I think that's like I think when that what we have on the calendar is scheduled for what topic we're covering. I think that's 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So he wasn't. We were thinking about having one today, but we didn't want to rush it. That stuff, and like I know he wouldn't want to talk about like the SAG Awards and really follow like award season. Right. The one we have planned is going to be really cool because he's actually a really fan of the franchise we'll be talking about, topic and franchise. So like it'll be really
I'm pumped for that conversation. That'll be a good episode.
So he'll be on in 3 weeks with us. And the only other big announcement, we do have anniversary episodes coming up, and there's a lot of movies that are opening. We're going to have episodes for. So there's a lot more content coming your way, not just news. Just want to throw it out there. We'll probably be discussing offline about how we're going to get all this stuff in, but we're going to make it work. It's really fun. And we're having to get
and we both really love it. So the boys will no doubt be busy, but I mean, busy doing stuff we love and chatting about our passion. So we are always happy to deliver industry news to you guys, and you guys know where to get it. You guys know where to find us anywhere you get your podcast. As Gaius mentioned, stay tuned to our socials this week, as we were definitely going to be throwing some questions your way. We want to know your favorite and your least favorite adaptations of Stephen King, and any tidbits about the wonderful creative genius mind. Throw them our way, guys. We love when you guys interact with us on social media. So stay tuned. Some more content coming your guys' way. And until next week, my friend, always a pleasure chatting films with you.
Yep, always a pleasure too, mate. Peace.